The first 10 years of this century, we have had three major crashes. In 2000 was the dot-com crash, followed by the 2006 real estate subprime crash, and then 2008, the banking crash. The question is this next? This is the giant crash of 1929. Every time I listen to those guys on CNBC, I call it bubble vision, they keep talking about the giant crash of 1929. I tell you what, it doesn't even compare to this one coming, you know? And those crashes, these bailouts are not accidents. And neither is it an accident there's no financial education in school. Financial education isn't saving money and investing for the long term in the stock market and getting out of debt. Exactly the opposite of that. Wealth and income inequality are the biggest moral crisis. I'd also say it's a spiritual crisis in America today, all around the world. This gap between the rich and everybody else is reaching critical proportions. And I think one of the biggest crises is the young people. Today's young unemployed become tomorrow's unemployable. They lose valuable jobs and training skills. So what's happening in America today, savers are losers. You know, most parents say to their kids, go to school and save money and work hard. But in 1970, when I graduated from school, $1 million at 15% interest earned me $150,000 a year. Now, you could live on $150,000 a year back then. And this is one of the causes between the gap between the rich and the poor. The other thing is that fewer and fewer families are receiving middle-class incomes. It's going down. Every time we shop at Walmart, we ship dollars and jobs over to China and Pakistan and all the other countries. That's capitalism. The other thing that's happening when people's incomes go down, they become dependent. Now, the U.S. government tells us that poverty has been beaten in America. Well, maybe poverty has been beaten, but what has increased is the entitlement mentality. The attitude that the government and other people should take care of me. As I said, it's a moral crisis as well as a spiritual crisis. This is the other crisis here, is Social Security. But anyway, I've met so many people my age. There's about 75 million baby boomers. I'm at the top of the baby boom chain. We expect the government to take care of us. That's a lot of highly educated people. That is a crisis. You can see it coming.
So, Bert, give us the bad news now. I mean, how far away are we? I mean, what do you see happening?
Let's go. ¿Qué pasa?
Well, the first thing is the good news. You know, the good news is that markets will go up and markets will reach very euphoric stages in the bull market, is driven by record-setting liquidity put in there by the Federal Reserve. You know, we're going to have here, before they get done between Congress and the Federal Reserve, we're going to have about 8 trillion, possibly 10 trillion, depending if all the programs go through, of new artificial money. This has never happened in the history of mankind. Money out of thin air. And, you know, that has its consequences. Not immediately. The first part is wonderful if you know how to take advantage of it. The guys on Wall Street, I bet they must be popping their champagne corks every night, because for them this is beautiful. But at the end, I mean, the speculators that have never been in the market before, they think this is how it always is. You know, you just buy a SPAC, or you buy an IPO, or you buy an electric vehicle company that has no cars, no product, no sales, therefore no earnings, and all they have is a business plan, and they'll sell you their stock for $5 billion. You know, all of these crazy things. Then you have Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of these things. You know, these are, the Bitcoin, this is a figment of people's imagination. There is no intrinsic value. But people think it is value because it trades. But what is behind that? In the end, it's just nothing.
What do you think about people want to short the market right now?
Not right now. There will be a time when we just took it.
But do you know what I mean?
In February.
The reason I'm saying this is because when I'm watching the news, they have all these experts come on, and most of them, were still, they weren't even born around the year 2000. But they're now the experts everybody's listening to, and all they've ever seen is a bull market. And what happened in 2008, that market went up and came down, and then it set off the biggest bull market run in history. And now it's 2021. And the reason I want people, or I suggest people read the Wellington letter, is because you'll have the facts, the charts, and the rationale of history, rather than listening to Bubble Vision, CNBC, or Bloomberg, or all of these people who need sensationalism to sell eyeballs that people want to come and listen. Like I listen to this guy Max Kaiser. It's now $220,000 for Bitcoin. Well, I hope he's right. He's a smart boy. He's been in the business for a long time, but he's got an agenda. Bert Doman doesn't have an agenda. Bert Doman, Wellington letter, is to educate you about the facts and the figures.
$8 to $10 trillion is being pumped into the economy right now. What's that impact going to have, and how long is that going to last?
Oh, that's what I mean.
Well, nobody can ever predict this because we have never seen this before. Okay, so we cannot even go by experience. The closest thing that I have found, and I wrote that a year ago, I said, we're going to get into a situation similar to the late 1970s, 78 to 1980. We had double-digit inflation, which drove interest rates. The prime rate went to 21.5%. That was on December 10th, 1980. And, so you go through these phases. The situation I see now is very similar to that, especially the attitude of the Federal Reserve, which is driving all this artificial money. But this is now times 100. Okay, this is so much bigger and more immense, this amount of money. We've never seen this before.
Hey, Bert, in 2008, when the market crashed, those clowns, Paulson and those guys said, we're going to pump in 700 billion. Today, they're pumping in trillions. Now, if you can get the difference between a billion in 2008 and trillions in 2021, you may understand why Bert's message today on the Wellington letter is important. Because when I was a kid, I used to try and build, a house out of cards. We'd sit there and play cards and you see him build this. But eventually, the house of cards always comes down. So please hear what I'm saying, you guys. If you listen to what everybody else is saying, you're going to get caught in one of the biggest crashes in world history. When it's coming, I don't know. And we don't recommend what you do, but we do recommend you get educated. Yeah, they're printing trillions of dollars, but the thing I want to talk about today is where is that money running to? That's the biggest question. It's called the reverse repo market, which 99% of the people have never heard of the repo market. What is the reverse repo market, and what is the repo market?
We had a little mini crisis in the repo market in 2019.
September 17th, 2019. I know the date exactly.
Yeah. And
interest rates went to 10%.
Of what we're having now. Suddenly, the repo market, first let me explain what it is. It's overnight money. Banks need to have reserves at the Federal Reserve. They have a certain reserve requirements, okay? So they park that money at the Federal Reserve, okay? And this is overnight money, so when suddenly they're a little short on the reserves that they have to put up, they go to another bank and say, can I borrow $10 billion overnight? Okay? And the other bank that has excess reserves, they then give it over, just for one overnight, okay? And what we had in 2019, suddenly the banks that were lending the money overnight refused to do so. They, for some reason, they were probably fearing something, that they would not get the money back the next day, and they stopped lending. Then the Federal Reserve had to go in there, and they had to pump in $250 billion overnight just to keep the market liquid.
So what happened in March of 2020, it went reverse repo. They had to, instead of injecting money in, the banks started pushing money into the Fed. There's two banks in the world today, the big banks like Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and all that, and there's the Fed. So the money started coming out of the banks and flowing into the Fed. That's a reverse repo. Is if you understand what happens is the money is flowing out of the banks. That means your money market funds, your 401ks and all that, the banks are running. And that's what I want people to understand right now. So that is crucial to understand, because it's not about should I buy this stock or that stock or this real estate a good deal and all that. Those are for idiots. And those are idiots. I just go nuts. The point I want to get here is this, is that if you're prepared for this, this could be the best news for you.